This is a ferro rod. This is not. This is flint and steel. This is not. Okay, flint comes from the flint that they got from England. This happens to be chert. But essentially what they're talking about is a hardened rock that is hard enough to scrape metal or ferrous or iron off of a hardened piece of steel. And when it scrapes off, it binds with oxygen and turns into fire in the air. A ferro rod, ferrocerium, if I'm saying it right, is essentially a hard piece of steel that scrapes off a softer piece of steel that has iron in it and allows that iron to bond with oxygen. Iron is flammable when it mixes with oxygen. That's why you see this blackening on the outside. That is a slow motion bonding of iron with oxygen. So if I take these little chunks right here and I scrape them off and they hit air, I get sparks. Okay? These are super hot, much hotter than flint and steel, and it is much easier to start a fire with a ferro rod than it is to start with flint and steel. Because of that, we use char cloth. Char cloth is any plant-based material that has been cooked in fire until all of the gases have been removed and it creates char. Now, we can do this with punk wood or punky wood. We can do this with cotton. So an old shirt like this, as long as it's 100% cotton, or an old piece of Levi's. This is a really tight lid. And essentially you cook it, and while it's in the fire, it'll make a little candle that comes out. As soon as that candle comes out, you remove it, let it sit until it cools off, because if you immediately introduce oxygen, it will start to burn again. And you will get these little chunks of char cloth, okay? So the way that you're going to want to run the flint and steel setup is get a chunk of char cloth, a chunk of punk wood, a chunk of tinder fungus, whatever it is that you're going to use. The easy thing is the char cloth because it's easy to create. And then you're going to run your striker or your hardened iron on your hardened rock. If this isn't hardened, it won't work. Essentially, it's like the difference between running your fingers through mud versus running your fingers through sun-baked mud. The chunks won't break off if it hasn't been hardened. So the first thing that I want to show you is the technique. We don't bonk it, we don't slam it, we kind of skip it. I like to have my elbow in my arm just kind of bouncing, okay? And essentially what will happen when I do that is if I hit it too hard, it doesn't work, I start breaking chunks of the rock off. But if I graze it, and I'm not hitting it straight, I'm hitting it at an angle. I want to kind of shave that sharp piece off. If I start hitting it at an angle, you will get all these sparks. Beautiful, nice, chill sparks. And I keep it kind of close to my body and I can just throw these sparks all day long. See, I hit it too hard, broke a chunk of rock off. But if you're not throwing sparks, then you break off a chunk of rock, it'll give you a new edge. So don't be afraid of breaking your rock or turning it. Like if I'm doing this and I'm not getting, try to not get sparks. If I'm not getting sparks and I start to put more pressure and turn, I will start to get more sparks. So practice with your striker, your flint and steel, before you add the char cloth to it. There's two ways you can do this. One of them is to hold the metal down and use the flint on the back of it. That is very effective if you've got a knife and you're using the back of your knife. It's also a good way to tear up the back of your knife and make it a less effective scraper. Understand you can do it. I don't, because I like using that back edge to scrape and I don't want to jack it up. But if I was in an emergency situation and needed fire, I would worry about getting a new knife later and jack up the back of my knife. Since I'm not, we're going to do it this way. So one thing I can do is to sit here and drop sparks into the pile of them, take the one that lights up and add it to some nesting material and then suffocate it. Or another way that I like to do, especially to show new people, is to take char cloth and either stick it on the bottom and drop sparks, stick it on the top and drop sparks, or fold it over and get sparks on the top and bottom, both ways. This is a very small piece of char cloth. If you're learning, start out with a bigger chunk. If during your practice, those sparks are going to the bottom, Still kind of the bottom. Those are going to the top. So if I've got a heating area here that throws sparks to the top and one here that throws sparks to the bottom, I will grab my sparks to the bottom on the top piece, grab my sparks to the top on the bottom piece, or split my char cloth in half and take sparks wherever they come, top or bottom. That's the preferred method for me, because all I need is to create an ember that holds in here, and then I'm going to transfer this this ember from the char cloth to some nesting material that I would create a fire from. So let's just get this started. I split it open, starts throwing some sparks. All I need is one. I might do this for a while before I get them. Okay, and I got one right there. I basically that spark went to the bottom. Let me suffocate this. See if we can do it again. Because if you touch this, it's super hot. Okay? And all I'm doing is just throwing a few sparks. Those sparks went to the top. So now what I would do is I'm going to get this away from my fingers. Take that little chunk of burning ember, and that's all I need to start my fire. You can feel the heat coming off of this thing clear out here. So I would basically add it to nesting material, give it some oxygen, and throw it in the fire. I've got another video that I'm going to show you that'll be just how to collect and run nesting material, and another video that will show you just how to run a fire lay. So this has been what flint and steel is, how to start the flint and steel. I essentially practice, get my sparks, add some char cloth to the bottom and the top, because it's easier than trying to go bottom or top. I cut it in half and start throwing sparks. Once I got a spark and that holds, I transfer that to some nesting material. It is quick and easy. You don't need a lot. If you use a little bit of it, it gives you the ability to have multiple fires. If you use up all of your char cloth too fast, that, makes it harder to replicate. You can use plant-based material like this stuff. I could char that right up, and then if that's the case and it's all loose and something like bark, then I'm going to throw my sparks into my pan, take out what I need, and suffocate them and use them again later. All right, guys, Ferro Rod, flint and steel. Hopefully this has been valuable to you. This has been a demonstration by Tyler White, and thank you for watching.